Everything around us in the financial world seems to be shifting. And the more I learn, the more I realize that we are standing on the edge of something huge. The global monetary system, the way we've always understood it, is about to undergo a massive transformation. I've been keeping an eye on central banks across the world, and one thing is becoming crystal clear. They are hoarding gold like never before. I mean, we're talking about record levels of gold accumulation. It's no coincidence either. Gold has always been the ultimate fallback during times of uncertainty, but there's something more going on now. Central banks aren't just preparing for some economic turmoil. They're laying the groundwork for a complete overhaul of how money works. At the same time, these same central banks are pushing for the introduction of central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs. If you haven't heard of them yet, get ready, because they're about to be everywhere. CBDCs are essentially digital versions of the money we use now, but with one crucial difference. They're issued and controlled directly by central banks. No more paper bills or coins, no need for traditional banking systems the way we know them. Imagine pulling up an app on your phone to access a digital version of your local currency, one that operates on a totally secure, transparent system. Here's where things start to get really interesting. These CBDCs could potentially be backed by the gold that central banks have been quietly accumulating. That means the digital currency in your wallet wouldn't just be a number on a screen, it would be tied to something real, something solid like gold. That kind of backing could make these digital currencies incredibly stable, especially compared to our current system where fiat money is only backed by trust in the government that issues it. And it's not just a pipe dream. Some countries are already testing gold-backed digital currencies, and central banks have been ramping up their research into how blockchain technology can make all of this possible. If you think blockchain is just about cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, think again. Central banks are planning to use this technology to create a new, secure way to issue and manage their digital currencies, moving money around in a way that's transparent and efficient. We're on the verge of witnessing a financial reset like no other. Everything we know about money, how it's created, how it's controlled, how we use it, could be turned upside down. Central banks are clearly preparing for something big, and it looks like CBDCs and gold will be at the center of it. We might not feel it in our day-to-day lives just yet, but change is coming, and it's coming fast. What remains to be seen is how it will all play out and how this reset will impact everything from local economies to the way we interact with money on a global scale. It's impossible not to notice the growing tension in the global economy, and one of the biggest shifts happening right now involves the BRICS nations: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. These countries are making moves that could completely change the balance of power in the financial world. What's especially interesting is their push to move away from relying on the US dollar, which has long been the dominant currency for global trade and finance. The BRICS nations are promoting something that feels almost revolutionary in today's financial landscape: gold-backed currencies. For a long time, most of the world's currencies have been based on the idea of fiat money, currency that isn't tied to any physical asset like gold, but is instead backed by the trust and authority of governments. The US dollar is the prime example of this, but BRICS countries are heading in a different direction. They are seriously exploring the idea of a new reserve currency that's backed by hard assets like gold. Think about that for a second. A reserve currency is basically the currency that's widely accepted in international trade and held in significant quantities by governments and institutions as part of their foreign exchange reserves. Right now, the US dollar plays that role, but BRICS nations are signaling that they don't want to rely on the dollar anymore. Instead, they want to create something new, something more stable and secure, and gold is their answer. This isn't just speculation either. There have been real steps taken in this direction. We've already seen announcements from the BRICS countries about their plans to introduce a new trading currency that's tied to gold. The idea is that this new currency would offer more security than the US dollar, especially in times of economic uncertainty. Gold has always been viewed as a safe haven in turbulent times, and by linking their currency to it, BRICS nations could create something that's much more resilient. But it's not just about creating a gold-backed currency. The bigger picture here is what it means for the global economy. Moving away from the US dollar could have massive implications. For decades, the dollar has been the default currency for international trade, which has given the US enormous influence on the world stage. But if BRICS countries succeed in promoting a new reserve currency backed by gold or other hard assets, it could significantly reduce the dollar's dominance. What's even more fascinating is the timing of all this. BRICS nations are accelerating their efforts, and it seems like the momentum is building quickly. Countries like Saudi Arabia have expressed interest in joining BRICS, which could make their plans even more powerful. Saudi Arabia is a major player in the global energy market, and if they align themselves with BRICS, it could lead to a huge shift in how energy is traded, moving away from the US petrodollar system. And there's more. Russia recently confirmed that they are working on a BRICS currency backed by gold. This is a huge development, and it's likely to be a key topic at upcoming BRICS meetings. The idea of a new trading currency, independent of the US dollar, is gaining serious traction, and it's no longer just a possibility. It's becoming a reality. So, what does this all mean? Essentially, we're witnessing the early stages of what could be a major transformation in global finance. The BRICS nations are making strategic moves to reshape the system, focusing on stability and independence from the dollar. If they succeed in creating a gold-backed reserve currency, it could have a ripple effect across the world, changing the way trade and finance are conducted on an international level. It's fascinating to see how quickly the global financial landscape is evolving, especially when it comes to the BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. What really stands out is their bold move to create their own independent payment system. And they're doing it using blockchain technology. This isn't just a technological upgrade, it's a strategic move that could completely reshape international trade and finance. For years, most global trade has relied on the SWIFT system, which is used for transferring money between countries. SWIFT has been the backbone of the international banking system, connecting banks around the world. However, it also comes with limitations, especially for countries that face economic sanctions. The reliance on SWIFT means that if a country is hit with sanctions, it can be cut off from the global financial system almost instantly. This has been a major point of frustration for some of the BRICS nations, particularly Russia, which has been targeted by sanctions in recent years. That's where blockchain comes into the picture. Blockchain is the technology that powers cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, but its potential goes far beyond that. It allows for secure, transparent, and decentralized transactions, which means no single entity controls the system. The BRICS nations are leveraging this technology to build a payment system that's free from outside control and interference. By using blockchain, they can create a system that allows them to trade with each other using their local currencies, completely bypassing the need for SWIFT and, more importantly, avoiding the impact of sanctions. This move is about more than just convenience. It's about independence. The BRICS countries are effectively saying, "We're tired of being vulnerable to sanctions and dependent on a system that can be used against us." By creating their own payment system, they gain the freedom to continue trading even when facing political or economic pressure from other nations. What's particularly smart about this approach is that it strengthens their trade relationships with each other. By settling payments in their own currencies, they reduce their reliance on the US dollar, which has long been the dominant currency for international trade. This shift could have a huge impact on global markets as the dollar's influence begins to wane and local currencies become more important in international transactions. Another key advantage of using blockchain for this payment system is the transparency and security it offers. Every transaction is recorded on a digital ledger, which makes it incredibly difficult to manipulate or alter the data. This level of security is critical when dealing with large-scale international trade, where trust and accuracy are essential. There's also the speed factor. Traditional international money transfers can take days, especially when multiple banks and systems are involved. Blockchain transactions, on the other hand, can be processed much faster, potentially in real time. This could streamline trade between BRICS nations, making it easier and more efficient for them to do business with one another. The creation of this blockchain-based payment system is a clear sign that BRICS is preparing for a future where they don't have to rely on existing financial infrastructure that may not always serve their interests. It's a forward-thinking move that positions them as leaders in the shift toward digital finance. In the long run, this could change the way international trade works. Other countries may decide to join this new system, especially those who want to reduce their dependence on the US dollar or avoid the risks of sanctions. It's still early days, but it's clear that the BRICS nations are laying the foundation for a new financial order, one where they have more control over their own economic destiny. It's not every day that you hear a leader like Christine Lagarde, the president of the European Central Bank, openly discuss both the benefits and risks facing the global economy. But recently, she made some strong points that caught my attention. On one hand, she acknowledged the real potential that distributed ledger technology, DLT, has for modernizing our financial systems. On the other hand, she issued a warning that should make all of us sit up and take notice. She compared the pressures the world economy is under today to those experienced in the 1920s. If you know your history, you'll remember that the 1920s eventually led to the Great Depression in the 1930s, a period of severe economic collapse. So, this comparison is definitely alarming. First, let's talk about distributed ledger technology, DLT, which is basically the backbone of blockchain and cryptocurrency systems. Lagarde isn't some blockchain evangelist, but even she sees the upside of this technology. DLT has the potential to streamline financial processes, make transactions more efficient, and improve the security of digital financial systems. Imagine a future where banking transactions, identity verification, and even entire financial markets could run on a more transparent, secure system. It's not just about cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, it's about revolutionizing the entire way money moves around the world. With DLT, you have a digital ledger that is practically impossible to tamper with, meaning there's less room for fraud, corruption, or human error. It's like having an airtight, secure vault for every single transaction. Lagarde highlighted that DLT could bring real benefits to the traditional financial world. For instance, it can reduce the need for intermediaries in financial transactions, speeding up processes that now take days and cutting down on costs. In a way, it's like upgrading the outdated plumbing in a house. You don't necessarily see the pipes, but everything runs more smoothly, faster, and without leaks. This could have massive implications for how banks, businesses, and governments operate. But Lagarde didn't stop there. She also sounded the alarm about some pretty serious economic challenges. In her speech, she made a striking comparison to the 1920s, a decade that started with rapid growth and ended in the disaster of the Great Depression. Why does she think we're in a similar situation today? One of the reasons is that central banks around the world, including the European Central Bank, have found themselves in what she called a tiny box. For years, they've been trying to balance stimulating the economy with managing debt, interest rates, and inflation. It's like walking a financial tightrope, and any misstep could have huge consequences. What's more concerning is the pattern of massive money printing we've seen over the past few years. During times of crisis, like the 2008 financial collapse or the COVID-19 pandemic, central banks around the world responded by printing more money to keep the economy afloat. While this worked in the short term, it also has consequences. As more money floods the system, currencies get devalued. This is already happening. We're seeing inflation creep up, and the purchasing power of currencies like the euro and the dollar is weakening. Lagarde also pointed out that we are entering a period where the global financial system may need a reset. The combination of rising debt, slow growth, and devalued currencies creates the perfect storm for a potential economic crisis. She compared this moment to the late 1920s, when excessive risk-taking and poor financial policies led to one of the darkest periods in economic history. What really struck me was her acknowledgement that central banks are running out of tools to fight these challenges. Interest rates are already at historic lows in many countries, meaning there's not much more room to lower them to stimulate the economy. At the same time, debt levels are skyrocketing. Governments and central banks are caught between a rock and a hard place, just like they were before the Great Depression. They need to find ways to stabilize the economy without pushing it over the edge. In short, Lagarde is saying we need to be prepared for significant changes in how our financial systems operate. The traditional methods of managing economies, printing more money, adjusting interest rates, may no longer be enough to prevent a crisis. DLT offers a possible solution for modernizing these systems, but it won't fix the deeper structural issues on its own. It's a wake-up call for anyone paying attention. We're heading into uncertain times, and while technology like DLT may help, there's still a lot of work to be done to avoid a repeat of the economic disasters of the past. Lately, I've been hearing more and more about this idea of a global financial reset, and it's becoming clear that we might already be in the middle of it. The way we understand money, banks, and even our day-to-day transactions is about to change in a big way. The driving forces behind this shift? Central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, and gold-backed currencies. Together, they are paving the way for a completely new digital financial system. Now let's break this down a bit. First off, CBDCs are digital versions of the money we use now, like the dollar, euro, or yen. But instead of existing in physical form, they exist entirely online. What makes CBDCs different from something like Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies is that they are issued and controlled by central banks. This isn't just some tech experiment. These digital currencies are being pushed by major international organizations like the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and the World Bank, which means they're likely to become a key part of our future financial system. One of the main reasons CBDCs are gaining so much momentum is because they offer central banks a way to modernize how they issue money and control the economy. With CBDCs, governments could have more direct control over the flow of money, making it easier to track transactions, combat illegal activities like money laundering, and implement monetary policies more efficiently. Imagine a world where every dollar, euro, or yen is traceable in real time. Central banks would know exactly where money is going, and that kind of control could lead to some big shifts in how economies are managed. But it's not just CBDCs that are part of this reset. There's also a growing push for gold-backed currencies, and this is where things get really interesting. For decades, most of the world's money has been fiat, meaning it's not tied to anything of intrinsic value like gold or silver. It's based on trust in the government that issues it. However, with growing concerns about inflation and the devaluation of fiat currencies, some countries are starting to explore gold-backed currencies again. The idea behind a gold-backed currency is simple. Every unit of currency is tied to a specific amount of gold. This adds a layer of security and stability, especially during times of economic uncertainty. Gold has always been viewed as a safe haven, a reliable store of value. And now, as part of this financial reset, we're seeing a return to this idea of pegging currency to something tangible like gold. What's fascinating is how central banks are combining these two concepts, digital currencies and gold backing. They're creating digital currencies that could potentially be backed by gold reserves, blending the best of both worlds. You get the modern efficiency and traceability of a digital currency, combined with the security and stability of gold. This could fundamentally change the way we think about money and its value. And it's not just a few countries dabbling in this. Major players on the global stage are pushing for this shift. The IMF, for example, has been talking about the benefits of digital currencies for years, and the World Bank is also exploring how these new systems could be implemented in developing countries to help boost financial inclusion. We're talking about a coordinated effort from some of the most powerful financial institutions in the world. What does all of this mean for us? Well, for starters, it could mean the end of cash, as we know it. Physical money might become a thing of the past, replaced entirely by digital versions that we store on our phones or in other digital wallets. It could also mean more stability in the value of money, especially if more countries adopt gold-backed systems. But with that also comes more surveillance and control over how we use our money. It's a bit of a double-edged sword. On one hand, a more stable, secure, and efficient financial system sounds great. On the other hand, the level of control that central banks and governments could have over every single transaction is something to think about. As this financial reset continues, it's going to be important for all of us to stay informed and understand how these changes will impact our lives, because whether we realize it or not, the reset is already happening.